Today's exciting interview, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Books to Life Marketing, the team making it all possible. They specialize in helping authors bring their stories to life through expert publishing, marketing, and media exposure. They're behind some of the most inspiring author journeys we've seen. If you're an author looking to elevate your book, Books to Life Marketing is the partner you want in your corner. And our guest today is Joe Starita. He's the author of I Am a Man, Chief Standing Bear's Journey for Justice. How are you, Joe? I want to kind of talk a little bit about who you are but thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation, and I am very juiced to talk about one of the great American heroes this country has ever produced that far too few people know about.
Absolutely.
We're gonna
So
change
I'm
that.
just impressed by your background. Joe is an investigative reporter in New York and Miami for 15 years before joining the UNL College of Journalism, where he taught depth reporting for 20 years. A two-time Pulitzer Prize nominee, the Lincoln native has won more than 25 national regional awards for his reporting. Starita also is the author of three acclaimed books on Native Americans: The Dull Knives of Pine Ridge, A Lakota Odyssey, I Am a Man, Chief Standing Bear's Journey for Justice, and A Warrior of the People. I mean, Joe, my goodness,
Yeah.
you have an unbelievable background and success. So congrats on all the work you've done to show your talent in writing.
This story produces a lot of great stories, and I feel very honored to be able to select some of them and spend 2.5 to 3 years drilling down into the heart and the soul of those stories and trying to bring them up so Americans who don't know anything about Chief Standing Bear, after they read the book, they will be astonished at what an unbelievable human being grew up in the midst of their country.
What inspired you to write the book, first of all?
It has every emotion that exists in the human condition. The narrative arc of this story, if you were to take this story and run it through an EKG, you would see nothing but an endless series of highs and lows. You would see valleys of despair and hills of hope. You would see valleys of hatred and hills of love. You would see valleys of tragedy and hills of triumph. You would see valleys of cowardice and hills of courage. It has an almost biblical flair to it. And the range of emotions and the highs and lows, it's just everything a writer could ever want is in this story. And it's all true. Every single word of it is true. And that is as appealing as you can get. I was so terrified of messing up chapter 6, which is the pinnacle moment of the story, the courtroom scene, where for the first time in the 103-year history, a federal judge does something that has never happened in the history of America. And I was so worried about messing that up after 2.5 years of work that I moved to Italy. And I found a hotel room south of Sorrento, where my family is from, where nobody could find me. And I stayed in that hotel room, locked up like a prisoner, just writing chapter 6, The Color of Blood. And that's how much I care about this story.
Well, I can tell you really care about the story a lot, and it's something that there's a passion involved in all this, and
Yeah.
that's what makes. So, what can Americans learn from the story of Standing Bear?
Well, they can learn just the story itself, the story of human courage. Wendell Berry is one of my favorite writers, the famous Kentucky essayist and poet who once observed, if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. And how all of the narrative elements that pour into creating a person, where you were born, the city you were born in, the part of the city, the neighborhood you lived in, the family you had, the teachers you had, the church you worshiped in, the mosque, the temple, all of those tributaries flow into creating the narrative river of the self. if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. And nobody understood that better than Chief Standing Bear and his 750 followers who had lived in their beautiful Niobrara River homeland on the Nebraska-South Dakota border, where they transformed the Niobrara River Valley every summer into these lush fields of corn and pumpkins and squash. They knew where the best fishing holes were. But most importantly, it's where they buried their dead. It was their Jerusalem. It was their Rome. It was their Mecca. When the great Ogallala Lakota war chief Crazy Horse, who had led the battle against Custer, was once asked, "Where are your lands?" His response was, "My lands are where my fathers lie buried."
Oh my
So
God.
when Standing Bear and his 750 Ponca woke up one morning in January of 1877, and they saw a strange white man from, of all places, the Upper East Side of New York, appear in their village and tell them that the Great White Father wanted them to pack up and start walking 200, 400, 550 miles to Oklahoma because the white people wanted their land, they were astonished and they said no. And they brought in the military. The military cut off the food, they cut off the water, and in a couple of days, the older people and the younger people were hovering near death. So Standing Bear gave in. And in May of 1877, they began walking from their spiritual homeland where they had lived for 200 years, 550 miles to some place called Oklahoma. And it's a journey that you just can't make this up. On the fourth day, outside of a small Nebraska village called Neely on the Elkhorn River, a little baby girl, 18 months old, died of pneumonia from sleeping on this damp Army canvas
Oh my
tent.
gosh.
And her mother clutched this baby girl to her breast and screamed and cried and wailed in horror all day. Her father tried to open the arms and take the baby from her, and she wouldn't let her. In 4 days, she had lost her home. She had lost all of her belongings. She had lost her land. And now, on the fourth day of the journey, she had lost her only child, a child whose name was White Buffalo Girl. And the father begged the military commander if they could go into the village of Neely and talk to the town carpenter and make a little coffin and bury the baby girl before they were forced with bayonets to their back to keep walking another 450 miles to Oklahoma. And the carpenter built the coffin. And the next afternoon, in a steady drizzle, the entire village of Neely came out to bury White Buffalo Girl. And the father, through tears and through the rain, begged the people of Neely, the white people of Neely, "Please treat my daughter as though she were one of your own. We have to leave, but take care of her." And for 146 years, the people of Neely have done exactly that. It's the only grave out of more than 3,000 that is allowed to have flowers on it all year long. Mothers from all around the area still bring their little girls to the gravesite on Mother's Day and tell them the story about White Buffalo Girl. So this is the kind of story it is. It has these
Yeah,
three.
absolutely. So, what do you think makes such a great leader that you want to first talk about that and then it leads into other stories? You kind of see him as an unbelievable leader of his 750 and
Yeah,
how he's inspiring in so many ways. Kind of delve into that a little bit more as a writer versus, not giving away the book.
yeah. What makes Standing Bear a great leader was, that's the question.
Yes, sir.
What makes him a great leader is his courage and his ability to always put the people before him and to put their needs before his own. He was not a dictator. He was very human, and he was always able to sublimate his own needs and his own desires. The most prominent element and characteristic that made for a great chief was always to put the welfare of the people ahead of your own. And that's what Standing Bear did time after time after time.
Wow.
he he made sure that he was always making decisions that would benefit the all and not the one. And that's what he did in this tragic but heroic
Yeah.
story. So
Are
when
you
they get to,
hoping he's remembered as much as other leaders that have done this? That have
yes,
put themselves
absolutely.
put themselves first before, I mean, last in their people, and that's what leadership means, isn't it?
Yes,
A
and that's
leader
all.
takes the fall. The leader sees that his people are such an important part of it, and he could have done something different, like, right?
Yes, yes, he could have taken his own family and gone off and said the hell with the other 750. But no chief of any self-respect would ever do that, let alone standing bearer, who was just this symbol of courage, who always every decision he made was based on what is good for my 750 Ponca, not what is good for me and my family. And that ultimately led to a legal triumph that had never happened in the 103-year history of the United States of America. So they get to Oklahoma after this death march in which 11 people died, including his daughter, and they are just thrown onto the land. There's no food, there's no housing. They are forced to congregate in the creeks and the streams to get timber for fires and to catch fish, but those timbers and streams were also swarming with mosquitoes, and the mosquitoes were carrying malaria. And in the first year, between July 1877 and July 1878, 1/4 of the tribe died of malaria. And on Christmas week of 1878, his only son, who was destined to replace him as the chief, a 15-year-old boy by the name of Bearshield, Christmas week of 1878, laid in a curled up fetal position on the floor of a damp army canvas tent, dying of tuberculosis. And before his eyes closed in death, he begged his father, the chief, to take his body and bury it back in their sacred homeland, the white chalk bluffs along the Missouri River. Now, who does this? He dressed him up on the morning of January 2nd, that came in at 19 below zero, put him in a buffalo robe, put him in the back of a rickety buckboard wagon, and Standing Bear and 29 others that included 9 women and 8 children. They
Right.
began walking into a Canadian blizzard with no winter clothing, no food, and no money to carry out the deathbed promise that he had made to bury his son in the sacred white chalk bluffs that form the border between Nebraska and South Dakota.
Oh my goodness.
So
So,
that's,
yeah, so you talked a little bit besides Standing Bear. There's some other heroes in this true story. Talk about some of those
yeah,
other heroes a little deeper. Let's dive deeper into that.
yeah. This is like something right out of the Bible. You have Standing Bear, who could be David against the government's Goliath. You have a federal judge, Elmer Dundee, who is a grizzly bear hunting, Indian hating federal judge in Nebraska, the only one who had never made a decision in favor of Indians in his life. But he also has a son that he loves dearly, a son who went on to build the Coney Island in New York, of all places. And he empathized with Standing Bear. And you have General George Crook, who in many ways is the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And he could pass as Abraham. But George Crook saw these 29 Ponca, led by Standing Bear, marched into Fort Omaha in May of 1879 after having walked almost 500 miles. And he stood on the steps and he saw the women, and hanging off of their elbows were just long 3-inch clumps of black skin that looked like charred bacon because they had been so severely frostbitten, walking. Who does this? Who walks 500 miles with no food, winter clothing in the dead of winter to honor the deathbed wish of their son? Standing Bear did that. And George Crook called his superior in Chicago, a lieutenant general by the name of Philip Sheridan, who 4 years earlier had said the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And Brigadier General George Crook was a West Point graduate, a Civil War hero, and he was in charge of all military troops west of the Mississippi. And now he had 29 starving, near death Ponca prisoners who had illegally left their reservation to honor the deathbed promise of the son. General Crook calls Lieutenant Sheridan in Chicago and says, "What are my orders?" Sheridan tells him, "Tomorrow morning, turn their faces south and march them right back from where they came. They left the reservation illegally." And Crook, I can see this. I can see him pacing back and forth all night, his military conscience in battle with his civilian conscience. He knows as a military man, he has to follow orders or he could be court-martialed. But he
Right.
also knows as a
100%.
civilian that if he followed the orders, he would kill 29 people. So what does he do? He waits until 1 o'clock in the morning. He walks down to the stable. He saddles his horse. He rides 3 miles south. He knocks on the door. It opens, and it's the editor of the Omaha World Herald finishing his column for the day. And he says, "Thomas, I think I have a story you might be interested in." He lays out the story of a middle-aged chief who has just walked 500 miles in the dead of winter to bury his son, and the army decided that he needed to go to jail instead. I think that's a story you might be interested in. Tibbles is he's starting to write the story right away. It gets in the newspapers. All of Omaha reads about this chief whose only crime is to try and bury his son, and they start to. This is only 3 years after the Little Bighorn. And the people, the white people of Omaha, start to rally around Standing Bearer. The Jewish people of Omaha stand on street corners in the spring of 1879, Jewish people taking up collections from white people to help an American Indian get his son buried in their sacred homeland. Do you think that happened in America every day?
No.
No, I don't think so. And so finally, if you were in any kind of trouble in Omaha in the spring of 1879, the one attorney you would want representing you was Andrew Jackson Poppleton. First attorney admitted to the bar in Nebraska, former head of the Nebraska Legal Association, who currently was the attorney general for the Union Pacific Railroad. And he read this story by Thomas Henry Tibbles and said, "I want a piece of this. This is wrong. I think we can do something and make history that's never been made before." So he, unbelievably, on the advice of Brigadier General George Crook, who had been ordered to take these 29 Ponca back to Oklahoma, George Crook, the general, suggests to the lawyer that he file what is called a writ of habeas corpus, which is a document that forces the government to legally justify why they are holding Standing Bear and his 28 followers. And Andrew Jackson Poppleton files a writ of habeas corpus with Judge Elmer Dundee, and to everybody's amazement, this grizzly bear hunting, grizzled frontier judge, the only federal judge in Omaha, he accepts the writ of habeas corpus, and he declares a trial in which the military is going to have to legally justify why it is holding Standing Bear in jail. And it goes to trial, and it is an incredible moment. They're making a movie out of this in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
And this courtroom scene will be something really special. They argue about this and that. And as the people have been reading about forever. The courtroom is jam-packed. And at the very end of the trial, the judge announces it's over, but Standing Bear stands up with an eagle feather in his hair, a bear claw necklace, a Thomas Jefferson medallion around his neck that he had been given by the government years earlier, because the Ponca had a prideful saying that they had never harmed a white person. And so Standing Bear was given a presidential medal that he wore around his neck with his bear claws. And he stands up in this courtroom at 10:30 at night and says through an interpreter that he would like to say something. And they all see him walk up to the center of the courtroom. They saw him walk towards Judge Dundee. He raises his hand and says, "That hand is not the color of yours, but if I pierce it, I shall feel pain. If you pierce your hand, you also will feel pain. The blood that will flow from mine will be the same color as yours. I am a man. The same God made us both."
Mm.
And within minutes, people could hear women beginning to cry. George Crook, the military general in charge of all troops west of the Mississippi, got up and went over and shook Standing Bear's hand. He was so touched by the speech. And Judge Dundee said, "I will take this under advisement and get back to you." 10 days later, on May 12th, Judge Dundee ruled in Standing Bear's favor. And
Wow.
forced the government, in the first time in the 103-year history of the United States, a federal judge declared that from this point forward, a Native American must be considered as a human being, with the same constitutional privileges as the more fortunate white
Wow.
natives.
Do you feel that it's because of leaders like Chief Standing Bear and the people around him that made them see that human-like quality, and that's why things changed?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is a
Mm.
really good question and a really good observation.
Because I
Uh,
think when they saw the humanity and how they were able to, they probably thought of them as just animals, but seeing specifically enough the humanity
what
and
they
going
saw
through
is,
all that.
yes, exactly, Neil. You're right. You're right on the money. What they saw through Thomas Tibble's countless articles that appeared in Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, all over the country, what they saw in the courtroom and in those articles was a man who was not a heathen. He was not a savage. He was not a killer. He was just like you and me.
100%.
He loved his family. He loved his country. He was willing to walk 500 miles in the dead of winter with no food, winter clothing, to simply bury his son in their traditional homeland. What's more human than that?
They
And
saw
that's what
the
all came out during
resilience,
the trial.
for sure. And so
Yes.
you want to make this a movie too. You said that a
Oh,
part.
it is being made as a movie. It's
Awesome. So
already
you
under
already got
production.
it. So tell
Yeah,
us
yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a screenplay that has gone through 8 drafts. It's finally finished. Everybody signed off on it. One of the co-producers is a very famous filmmaker by the name of Jim Sheridan. He is Irish. He's been nominated for 12 Academy Awards. He's won
Fantastic.
4, and he is obsessed with this story. And he and an Andrew
Wonderful.
Troy, who is Apache, lives. They're going to be co-directors, and they've finished the script. They're casting now, and Sheridan. They're trying to get Daniel Day-Lewis to come out of retirement and play the military officer who forces the Ponca to go down to Oklahoma. And they are putting a lot of time, effort, and money into making this into a major film that Americans will understand a story that they've never heard before. And it's a very important story because, like I said, it is the first time in the 103-year history that a federal judge declared, who gave Native people a humanhood. They declared them as people and not as wards of the government. So when that domino toppled it set in motion all kinds of things that eventually led to Native Americans becoming citizens some decades later. But that lead domino, it fell on May 12th, 1879, in a federal courtroom in Omaha, Nebraska.
That's fabulous. I mean, but I think the story is so compelling. You're telling me in a way, and it's going to be a movie. Are
Yeah.
you going to write more now after getting going to be made into a movie? Are you done writing or not?
Well, I've written 3 books, and they're trying to make a movie out of a second one, and that's a book that's based on the first Native American doctor in the history of the United States, and it happened to be a
Wonderful.
woman. And what she had to overcome in the 1880s, being a woman and a Native woman, is unbelievable. So there is attempts to make a movie.
Out of that one
They're
too.
starting to make a movie out of that, but the Standing Bear movie is way downstream, and the Doctor movie is just kind of like getting out of the dock.
So,
But
what do you think is way downstream? When are you expecting it to be released?
the Standing Bear movie,
Yeah.
I think it's still going to be another year and a half. They had a major writer's strike that went on for a year in Hollywood,
I'm
and
familiar
then
with all that.
they
Yes.
had the fires, and
Yeah.
then they had the fires,
I'm
and so
hoping we're
that's
starting to see all the creators get back rolling
exactly.
again. And that's the exciting part of this as creators. There's so much great content and a great story that you're bringing to the table. And the feedback for your book has been tremendous, hasn't it? The feedback you've
Yeah,
been getting.
it really has. Yeah, it's been unbelievable, and I will just say, and I mean this sincerely, is that um, I hope your listeners buy this book, because every single penny that I get from royalties and from the movie contract, I put everything into a 10-year-old scholarship that I have called the Chief Standing Bear Journey for Justice Scholarship. And I have put 221 Native American students through college in the last 10 years on this scholarship.
That's fantastic.
And these are the poorest students in America. They come from reservations. There's a reservation. I put 3 students through college in Northeast Nebraska, the Santee Sioux Reservation, that has not had water in 4 years. It has not had water in 4 years. They have to truck it in because the water underground is filled with so much magnesium that it rots the brains out of children. So they have to truck in water. I gave 3 scholarships to Santee Sioux women, all women, one of whom is going from the Santee Reservation in Nebraska to the University of Washington in Seattle. And this is something that we can do. They do not have the resources to go to, but they're welders. I put them through welding
100%.
school. They're nurses. They're nurses who want to come back to the reservation and take care of their people medically for the rest of their lives. And 3 of them so far have done that.
Well,
And I want to
I'm
keep that going. I want to take people who have no chance of going to college because they have no financial resources and get them there.
Oh, I
And
love this. I mean, Joseph, you're doing such great work. I cannot wait till the movie's out because that's going to be the perfect way even to help with the foundation even further. But people
yeah,
purchasing the book right now, they're going to know you more and more after your great success as a writer. Where's the best place people can pick up your book?
you can get it through Amazon.
All right. Awesome.
Amazon is the easiest way to get it.
All right.
Uh,
Fabulous.
it's the easiest way to get it, and I promise to all of your listeners that I'm not blowing smoke here.
No, you're
This
not.
scholarship has existed for 10 years, and there are more than 200 students who now have a college degree. Uh, there is a woman named Lily Phillips whose mother hanged herself when Lily was in 3rd grade, and Lily found her body swinging from a ceiling fan in the bedroom when she was in 3rd grade. When she was in 6th grade, her father OD'd on drugs. So by the age of 12, she had lost both of her biological parents. And she was taken in and raised by this amazing grandmother who raised her and 8 other siblings and cousins, all in a trailer with no air conditioning. And now that Lily Phillips, who grew up with everything against her, she's going to graduate in May as a radiology technician. And she is going to go back to the reservation and work in their health clinic and try and give back to literally the poorest people in Nebraska.
Okay.
Nebraska is comprised of 93 counties. The Omaha Reservation is in Thurston County, which is the poorest of the 93 counties. But this girl who lost both of her parents by age 12, got a Standing Bear scholarship, is going to be a radiology technician come May, and is going to go back home and take care of her people. That's what I want to have happen. That's what Standing Bear was all about, taking care of
I
his
love
people.
it. All right.
I want to
I
carry
appreciate
on
it.
that
So,
tradition.
Joseph, I love your passion. Thanks for stopping by and appreciate it, sir.
I appreciate you having me, and best of luck to you.
You